Everybody ready? Let me get a thumbs up. Right. Tammitha, are you ready? Tammitha is muted. But I would like to believe that that smile I'm seeing there is her being ready. All right. Hey guys, welcome and welcome back to Reese Teas, where we have conversations that matter with people who care. I'm so excited to welcome you guys to another installment of our new segment, the Hot Tea Panel. Joining us today are influencer, businesswoman, and engineer Tammitha Lomey, who is joining us mobily as she makes her way home from the beach. Is mobily a word? Who is joining us as she makes her way home from the beach? Also joining us today is photographer and business owner Samuel, my friend and lawyer and fashion icon Timothy Millington, and also joining us today is my dear friend, influencer, doctor and mommy, Leah Herbert. So let's jump right into today's topics. Guys, the first topic is, according to the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, millennials in particular are choosing pre-marital agreements as a preferred option to protect and separate their property holdings, business interests, and to avoid potential alimony disputes. It's been a long-held belief that prenups are reserved for the wealthy, but now people in all income brackets are getting prenups to protect and separate their finances, assets, and debt. What are your guys' thoughts on prenups? I would love to start with Leah because she is the married person on the panel.
Hi. So I actually don't believe in prenups. I think, and this may be a very flawed way of thinking, but I feel like if you are getting into a marriage, you should not be thinking of the end of a marriage. And I know people are going to say that, well, it's all nice to think like that, but then when you get into it, most times or many times, marriages end and that's where things get sticky. But I personally just do not believe in it. I feel like if you go in with that mindset, that kind of like puts a damper on your marriage to begin with. And I just don't believe that you should go in with that type of mindset. So no, I don't believe in prenups.
Let's jump to the lawyer. Timothy, what are your thoughts?
So I agree with what Leah said. I am not an advocate of prenups. I think the first thing that people need to do is figure out whether prenuptial agreements are even legal in the country that they're in. I don't believe it's any premarital agreements are legal in Trinidad and Tobago. So when people talk about prenups, the last I checked, I mean, I haven't been practicing there in forever, but I mean, the last I checked, no. And so when people get into this discussion, oftentimes in family law, we remind them that it's not legally binding. So you want to first verify with any family practitioner whether or not premarital agreements actually will stand in the jurisdiction that you're living in. It doesn't say that you can't get into a prenuptial agreement for property held maybe in other jurisdictions like the US or Canada, where oftentimes we see people enforcing them. But I agree. I feel like thinking so far into the future about the end of a marriage really does almost doom it to fail. I think there are things that you can do within a marriage to sort of maintain your independence. Women are much more empowered now. So, you're not subsumed by your husband. You could have your own property. You could keep it in your own name. You could keep it within your family. You could do gifts to your children, to your parents, without having to think about the end of the marriage. So having separate bank accounts and joint bank accounts, I think it was Steve Harvey who advocates that you have like four, one account for you, one for him, a joint saving and a joint spending. So I think there are things that you can have in a marriage to separate and, keep your assets within your family, and that comes with communication. But going into a marriage just saying, hey, no, what's yours is yours, what's mine is mine, I don't think it's really a good union.
I like that 4 bank account idea though. I never thought of that before. Sam.
Okay. Hi guys. So that's great points that both of you all raised actually. And it's good to hear your point, Leah, as a married person. I'm on the fence, so I don't totally agree, but I don't totally disagree. For prenups, I do understand the need or the perceived need for it, especially in this climate of how relationships go and so forth. Um, as you progress, divorce numbers they rise and so forth, and because of my personality and the way that I operate or I tend to operate, I tend to not necessarily focus but pay attention to numbers and so forth. Now, I do understand and I do agree with the first point, where I don't think that we should think about it in the sense that you shouldn't, enter the marriage with the not assumption, but with somewhat of a forecast of saying, well, okay, just in case, I think that could put a negative damper on things according to the conversation that the both persons have. However, I do see the somewhat need for it. I understand the concept or the notion of, when it is that you plan for it, or when it is that you put something like that in writing, you kind of start bad from jump. I sort of disagree with that notion simply because I understand the example I'm going to make now. It's small in comparison. But I like to think of when we buy a vehicle, other than it being a legal necessity at the point in time, I think just as how insurance is for a vehicle, where you don't go in saying, okay, I want to get into an accident, or I might get in an accident, or no one goes and buy a vehicle and say, well, yeah, I'm gonna buy this and yeah, accident bound to happen. But I do think that we do it just in case. And I think according to, once again, the relationship that the both individuals have and the understanding, I think once it is something, and Timothy, you know all about this, once it's something that the both agrees on, I think it's okay. Because obviously if it's signed under duress, it's not and void, right? But basically I was just saying that, I see the necessity for it. I see some persons perceived necessity because I understand the thought process behind it, but ultimately I think once it is something that the both agrees on, the both parties, I believe, well, yeah, sure. I've spoken to many people, both male and female, and they agreed with it. And I'm kind of surprised because of the dynamics between things, where it's typically the man saying, oh, yeah, I want to sign my, I more expected women to be up against it. But I had some women that I spoke to, and they were actually for it. And I don't know if it was in relation to where they were financially. I'm not saying that persons who are against it are not in another place. I'm just saying I'm not too sure if that's like a variable that was in play with that. But from my experiences, some persons are comfortable with it. But I think it's definitely something to talk about with your significant other earlier than later. You don't want to be against this thing and then fall in love and it does cause a rift. So I think with open communication and clear communication, both ways, I think, it can work dependent on whatever relationship that each person holds.
So I found myself agreeing with Sam wholeheartedly, and then I realized it is because Sam and I had this conversation before, and that's why I had jotted down in my notebook in the first place to be one of the topics, because I really loved the discussion that we had that day. I feel there are two ways I look at it. One, like insurance, I'm not planning to crash my car. I am not planning for my house to burn down. I'm not planning to get divorced, he said, unmarried. But I think it is, but cars do crash, houses do burn down, and sometimes divorces do happen. I'm not going into the marriage wanting to get a divorce, but I think it is good to have a contingency plan, which is just really also just appeals to my personality. I always have an ABC. Also, I look at it as like an extra vow. Like I look at it as a vow that says we did say all these other vows, but in case it does not work out, this extra vow says that you are safe with me. As in, very often in divorces, you hear people say, this isn't the person I knew, this isn't the person I recognized, my husband was unrecognizable, I can't believe Matthew come and take all my things, da, 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 da. So I just feel like a prenup is just this extra vow that says that I love you. Sickness, health, thing, that was part. But just in case it don't work out, just know that you are safe with me. You don't have to worry about me coming to take your things. And for me, being a person who is not just me, like I am trying to take care of my family, you know, my both parents are retired, so that my finances are not just real. Yeah, so that it would be good for me to know that my family and I are protected should this relationship not work out. Timothy's hand is up. Hey, wait, what's up? Is going back down?
No, my hand is still up, but
Oh,
Leah's hand went up also, and I will let you go before me because I sense in any case that we're probably going to say the same thing. But Leah, you could go ahead.
I was not going to say you can actually go first because I'm sure you're not going to say the same thing.
Oh.
Okay.
So two things. One, remember, a prenup is just a contract, and all prenups are drafted differently. They have different conditions and they have different clauses. So that's one. And I know we focus very heavily on prenuptial agreements, but even in your marriage, just like you don't have to commit to insurance at day one and you can't change it, you can get into agreements during your marriage. Again, whether or not your particular jurisdiction will enforce it is another question, but you can make that decision even after the initial stages. What I don't like about that notion of, oh, if you sign a prenup, you love me, I don't like that test. And I feel like people use it as a test oftentimes when we see it being used in movies or being talked about. If you really love me and you're not for my money, and the prince who has the money, sign this prenuptial agreement because I know you're in it for love. And like you, Rian, I think very strongly about my family and about creating a legacy. And whomever I get into a relationship with and eventually marry, I would hope that we're creating a legacy together for both of our families. So now it's two people actually contributing to strengthen that sort of legacy creation and protection. So it's not in a marriage, but I'm still focused on me and my wealth or generational wealth building and growth, but it's about us. And I think sometimes the conversation with prenups take away from that discussion of us because you're still so much focused on it's about me. It's about me and my family and my wealth that I either have or will have in the future. And I want to keep it right here. And it takes away so much from the discussion about the coming together of two people and the building together. And like I said, you can build together and still protect things in trust. You can still give to your family. You can give gifts to your family during your lifetime. During your marriage, like it's still yours, but at the same time, just going into this union, thinking about how can I just protect mine, takes away from it. And I hate the whole idea of if you sign this, then you love me kind of notion. Never worked for me at all. That's what I wanted to add.
Yes, Leah.
Okay, so it turns out we kind of did say the same thing, or one. But I am from the idea of if my husband asked me, I mean, this is all under the notion that it is like legal and binding in Trinidad when it's not, but we're just saying, if he asked me to sign a prenup, I would feel totally against the marriage. I don't want to marry you anymore. Because I feel like first off, when you decide to marry somebody, like there's a certain amount of trust, there's a certain amount of love, of course, but you view this person differently. This is somebody that you are taking, and now both of you are going to create a family together. And I'm always under the opinion that the family that you create with your significant other trumps the family you came from. And while that may sound very controversial. I am 100% a believer in that. So that if I decide, because the whole idea of marriage is two people coming together to create their own family. I understand the wanting to protect your wealth and your legacy for your family, and nothing is wrong, because I have no qualms about supporting your family. Of course, all of us, like, especially for those of us whose parents have given up so much to put us where we are now. I am 100% behind supporting your parents and giving back to them, because without them, of course, we're not going to be where we are. But our parents created their own family. That's their family. They created that. This is now my family I'm creating with my significant other. And I feel like when you go into the whole idea of creating a prenup, it's like if you are still separate and apart from the family that you are choosing to create, then how can you want to create a family with somebody but still not trust them enough to, that you have to create something to kind of prevent all of that from happening? I don't know if I'm making sense, but like, I feel like if this is now your primary family, and I don't know if Rian, you might not understand yet, because probably because you're not married and you don't have kids and stuff, but I'm telling you, my primary family now is no longer the family I was born into. It's the family that I've created. So that if I have to protect my husband and my child, they come first over everybody else. And for me, a prenup makes me feel as though my husband does not trust me. Then why, if you don't trust me enough, why would you even want to create a family with me? Why am I the person that you are now choosing to separate yourself from your family you were born into, to create a family with me, if it is you are not even, like, you're not even trusting me enough to not stab you in the back in the end? And I understand the whole idea of like insurance for cars and stuff, but I feel like that is not,
you think it's a false equivalence?
Yeah, I don't think it equates with, of course, cars crash, so that's why you take out insurance. Because you wouldn't take out insurance, like, it's like almost like if you want to take out insurance only for one person who driving this car. Like, okay, I have a car, but I'll only take out insurance on my 16-year-old son because I know he's gonna crash the car, and I don't need to take out insurance for the rest of the family. Like, that doesn't happen. You have to take out insurance for anybody driving the car. That's like a given. I don't feel like a prenup. I feel like a prenup is more targeted, and I feel like I just don't agree. I feel like it does not make sense to me to want to have a family and then not trust the person.
Understood. Sam, let's get Tammy's view and then I'll come back to you. Yeah? Hello, Tammitha.
Hey guys.
So nice to see you.
Sorry for being here. I tried to throw on a jacket so a little more appropriate. So unfortunately for everyone who has spoken so far, I am completely in agreement with prenuptial agreements. And I have several reasons for that. My name is Adelia. Sorry, that's my middle name, but y'all will just... But I think, so I was reading several books. So I'm a reader, and coming out of that, I feel like Sam tried to use the example with the insurance for your car, but I think a prenup is like a discussion that you have in a relationship, and I do understand that there are a lot of more legal things that go with it, but I feel like to prepare for a possibility is not the same thing as calling it an eventuality. And what I mean by that is it's so much easier if you understand your partner at that point in time and you know what you're getting into, and you understand, okay, so if this happens, do we split the house? Do we do this? Do we have that discussion, as opposed to we're having the discussion when we're angry and there are emotions? Because I was reading this book recently. It's called Your Love Life. Sorry for using bad words. You could probably beat that out. Sorry. And he brought up a a point. He was like, a lot of times people go into relationships and we don't have the hard discussions. And the hard discussions are what helps to build a relationship. And I struggle to understand where he was coming from, because the entire book he was talking about staying with your partner. And then he spoke about, okay, we need to have a discussion about breaking up with your partner because you got to see your partner in a different light, right? And he spoke about, like, when you go on a plane, you're more often than not, you're going to get to your destination, but you still listen to the thing, oh, you pull on your airbag, blah, 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 you put this on before you put this on for your child, blah, blah, blah. You listen to the whole thing over and over and over again, because there's a possibility that you could crash. Now, you're probably not going to crash. Planes don't really crash. Like, it's very unlikely, right? But you still have the conversation. So I feel like this is probably Leah's point first, that I don't think it would weaken my relationship if we have that conversation in the beginning. If I understand that these are assets that we're separating, or this asset is on my name and this asset is on your name, or this is a conversation that, okay, if this happens, then, because a lot of times people change during relationships, and I feel as though approaching the same problem when you are emotionally charged, which is in divorce mode, versus approaching that problem before, it brings a different type of energy and a different type of settlement to the same problem. And I feel like a lot of the times, my grandmother used to say this, if you don't, and it's not really preparing, I feel like you could make the situation a lot more messy than it needs to be if you have that conversation before you're emotionally charged. If it ever happens. If it never happens, then great. We don't need to prenup, we rip it up when we're on our deathbeds and the two of us go to God holding hands, right? But if it does happen, I feel like it puts us in a prepared place. So it's like, imagine the same couple getting divorced on the same day. I feel like the couple who went into it with a prenup and they know what they get in if they split is 10 times, in my opinion, more likely to have a healthier breakup as opposed to the one who's fighting and then just going through all of it. And I don't know, because I'm not a lawyer, I'm not really certain as to how much detail you can put in your prenup. I remember when I was reading Gabrielle Union's book, she went into a good bit of detail about her prenup with Dwayne Wade. And basically you think that he basically has so much more money than her. And she was speaking about, you'd think that it would be to protect, but it's to protect both of them in the unlikely event that they're at that point, at some point in their life, for whatever reason. So for me, I think that if I have to get divorced at some point, I prefer to be at that point, having had that difficult conversation or prepared for it at some point when I'm not as emotionally charged as I would be on that divorce day. So that's my point.
Understood.
You can go ahead, Timothy.
Quick sidebar. I really thought she would have been richer than him, which I know is the least of the points.
Yeah, she said he's way richer than she is.
Because it's a little bit I know about entertainment, I assume she should have been getting like residuals from Bring It On and all those things still. So yeah. Sam then Tim.
Yeah, actually most of what I wanted to say, Tammy ended up saying, right? So what I wanted to clarify is that I think there's a big misconception about what prenups are. And sometimes you may think it's just to protect one person. Many times prenups, it's created in a way that it protects the both parties of their both. And we always assume that the person writing the prenup or advocating for that prenup is the one with probably the most to lose or whatever it may be. But similar to what Tammy said, prenups, as far as I know, and Tammitha, you could correct me on this, prenups can be pretty much detailed in terms of what goes where. And a lot of times, and this is just from my own small research and experience, a lot of people who do prenups, it's not only for them, it's also for family. So I'm just addressing the point that Leah would have made. You know, I have some men that I told, like my neighbor in South, he has a prenup, right? Now, I don't know if it was created in Trinidad or not, so I'm not too sure of the legality in Trinidad, but they are not from down here. And
Okay.
I remember he explained to me at some point in time, he was like, if, let's call her Stacy, if Stacy supposed to say go now, just know Anthony and all of them getting everything in it. And he also said she was here for a while, so don't worry, I have she fixed up already and whatever. The point just being is just that sometimes you assume that prenups are just a one-sided thing, and I think, well, not a thing, but it's really not. It's more level, and I fully agree with Tammy's point as well. Persons change in relationships within the duration of relationships for a multitude of reasons. However, I think, I understand this may be seen as a false equivalent, but I personally, if it is that I have insurance for my vehicle and something happened to it, I'll be much more calm and cause myself and save myself a lot of stress because I already know what's
in place. You know that if it happens, call 800 star, like that. You know what to do when it happens. Understood?
But that's just, again, this is just my opinion now. As I
and it might change when ring hit finger. This is true.
That's correct. But
if it's one thing I learned about life is that, like Leah said, because sometimes people say certain things to you, and you as a person on the outside think it's bullshit. And I'm not saying this to you earlier, but as in, like sometimes when you give advice on certain things, people will say, well, you do a trend, so you would understand, or you do have, you're not married, so you would understand. And at the time, you just think, well, but this is logic. And then when it says you are in the situation, you realize. And I say that in the context of, I think it has all happened to all of us, even like in our jobs. Sometimes there are people who are on the outside and they say, boy, so-and-so is stressed. It's like, not me. And then when you reach, or something like, I'm not going on that road. I'm just saying something like infidelity. So I would say, well, if it's me, I'm going to leave him. And then when you turn reach, you realize it's not that simple. Yes, so Sam and I think are both saying, we hold these opinions as unmarried men. Check we back. Timothy, let me just get your hand up and then let's go to the next one.
Yeah, I think splitting is difficult at the end of the day, and doing family law was probably the most difficult one that I practiced because everything was emotional, and I don't think having a prenuptial agreement would make it less emotional. I think it's difficult. A marriage has a lot of ups and downs. I think the decisions that you make in the beginning of an interaction, you evolve in 10 years. And so for those who are advocates of prenuptial agreements or any sort of marital contracts, because now I think we've moved away from prenuptial agreements, which is before marriage, to talking a lot about what's happening in the marriage. And so if you're in a space where you are afforded the opportunity to have marital contracts, update them. If you're in a marriage for a year and you don't feel the same way that you did in the beginning, update the contract.
Right, because sorry to interject, Timothy, there's a Real Housewife of Potomac who did that. After her husband cheated, they updated their prenup to add some sort of thing. If they remain married for more than 5 years, she would get more than if they get divorced before 5. I can't remember exact details. I'm just saying there's an instance right now in pop culture where there's a prenup that was updated secondary to changed feeling.
Correct. And so I think for those who advocate for it and want to have it, update it, because I don't think you're going to be the same person throughout the duration of your marriage. You're going to evolve, you're going to change, your assets definitely are going to change, and you want to always be conscious of that. I think we have a habit of going into a contract, whichever contract, insurance, whatever it is, and then we leave it just thinking, okay, it's fine, without really checking in on it annually. Like, how do I feel about this? How can I update this? And so that's what I wanted to add about that. Just feeling like throughout the duration of your marriage, however long it is, if you are an advocate of a prenuptial agreement and entered into one, be smart enough to keep checking on your feelings and where you stand with the agreement so that you could update it. It is like any contract. It could be 2 lines, she gets everything, she gets nothing. Or it could be hundreds of pages. And you could get really, really detailed about everything. And there are lots of premarital contracts with those clauses of infidelity that would cause the contract to become void if it's found that X parties.
I put that in mind.
Yeah. And then at the end of the day, if that happens, you come back right to where most people start, in court, having a judge or an attorney kind of hash it out, trying to decide, okay, yes, you do this, you get this, the kids get this. This is so. At the end of the day, someone has to make that decision. I think it's because I'm semi in the profession, and have to like give a plug to all the lawyers out there. Give the lawyers some more money. Come on, like go to the lawyers. But what happens is having someone on the outside who is dispassionate, who isn't, I'm not in your marriage. I couldn't care less. Once you pay the bill, we're good. And so the judges too, they're going to make objective opinions. And it's hard to say you get to keep the house when for the past 30 years, I've been cleaning it. I've been painting it. I've been doing all the maintenance. You've been going to work, which is great. I've been going to work, but I maintain the house. But the contract said that you keep the house. So there's so much nuance to it, and that's why if you're going to do a contract, be detailed, update your contracts, and make sure that you're always kind of like checking in and having, like Tammitha said, those hard discussions. Like, hey, I don't really feel this anymore. I put in all of this work to updating XYZ. I feel now, no, we need to split this house 50-50. We need to split this asset 50-50. Oh, Apple is now off the ground. I shouldn't talk about brands. X company is now off the ground. You were able to do this. I was there supporting you. Now I want 50% in the company or 40% in the company. Whereas in the beginning, it probably was nothing. Things definitely you have to really be fluid about it and have those difficult conversations. I am not for the prenups. I'm like, if it ends, we go to court, we fight it out, give some lawyers some money.
Give some lawyers some money. My prenup having an infidelity clause. If you're on me, you mustn't steal away. If you're on me, I want you to run. Leah, is your hand up or is it from before?
Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to reiterate what he said, that I feel like I also take issue with the prenup because for somebody who's been in a relationship for 15 plus years with the same person, your emotions and feelings and realities change so much over the course of just 1 year. You might have started off saying, you know what, everybody keeps their assets that they came in with, and then maybe we buy a house, so we split it, we sell the house and you get half the money, I get half the money, or you know what, you're the woman, you're most likely going to end up with any children we have, you keep the house. But during your relationships is when you actually get to figure out, okay, you might have said, well, my husband paid for the house, so he should get to keep it in the prenuptial agreement. But in reality, no, it's me cleaning the house. It's me making sure that everything in the house is maintained. Yeah, he paid for it, but that was it. So therefore, is he more entitled to it because at the beginning of our relationship, when I didn't know nothing, I said that he would get to keep the house. So that's also why I take issue with it, because you really don't know how your relationship is going to play out.
Understood.
Until you end your relationship 10 years down the road and you're like, oh my God, I really signed this. I really want to kill him and take everything because he literally in word shit. Like, you understand? So I feel like also that's a problem with prenuptial agreements. But yeah, okay, let's move on to the next topic.
Understood. Tammy, your hand went up and down. Was it a mistake, or is it that what you wanted to say was said, or am I mistaken?
No, my hand went up and down, but I feel like if I add the point that I want to add, it's going to make things a little more controversial than it already is. But I do Timothy's like bring the controversy. No, because Timothy, I made notes on my little sticky pad here. Sorry, I'm doing engineer things, right? But I made notes when you were talking, and the first thing you said is that divorce court is an emotionally charged place, right? And Leah brought up a point just now, you really don't know how your marriage is going to go. But I still feel like maybe the conversation or some context might help that. But you spoke about it being a contract, and I'm just being devil's advocate here, but this doesn't need to be in the podcast because, you know, my mom might put me out if she hears this, right? But to some degree, marriage is also a contract. And if you look at a prenup like that, and you're saying that your feelings might change during the course of your marriage, the same can be said about the actual contract of marriage, because that is what a marriage is. That the marriage is your contract saying, I go and love this person. If he gets sick, I'll mind him. If whatever, I'll feed him, blah, blah, blah. Right? So it's the same, the argument that your feelings towards your prenup or any agreement
can be applied to the marriage contract as well.
Applies to the marriage contract again as well. So it brings into, I don't know, for argument's sake, you know, what are we doing with this whole marriage thing if we're saying, hear me out, don't crucify me, if we're saying that, you know, because our feelings changes, we have some apprehension towards the contract of marriage, in the same way that we have the apprehension towards the contract of prenups.
Well, yeah, I think that ties into what Timothy was saying about the way that we go into contracts and then rest them down, that, you know, you could always check in and you could always update. So I guess
you can update your marriage. I don't know if you can update your marriage. Can you update your marriage?
It has come on Google Play.
Update I think a second of you to take care again and taking that part out of
but I think in any relationship, contractual or otherwise, I think the idea of the updates, it might sound corny, but just the idea of us like sitting and having a conversation and checking in, where are we? How are we? How do you feel about XYZ? And especially if it is you have a family, or if it is you have shared household, and there are things like how you feel about the contributions that are being made physically, financially, etc. So not necessarily to codify it into law, but I definitely think that every relationship has to have updates. Even friends. There may be a point where you're just like, well, Tammy, you don't call me, you don't text me. Where's that one? So it doesn't necessarily have to be a literal, let us go back by the lawyer and adding this, adding that. But or it can be. Yeah, but I agree with you that if it is, you could change the way you feel about the prenup, you could change the way you feel about the marriage contract. And then
it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope. Like that argument, to me, in my personal capacity, like I like to apply things to the same thing. I like to draw parallels, and that's probably because that's how
what I gather you are saying is that the argument is we could either be out here updating one contract or two.